I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is the How to Rock Astrology audio series. The information in this recording is copyrighted by Dustin Cormier, 2015, all rights reserved, except where noted in the recording. The following information on ascendant or rising signs comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Guidelines to interpreting the ascendant. Although the ascendant is of deep and pervasive importance for each individual, there is no denying that it must be related to the rest of the chart, and especially to the sun sign, in order to understand it thoroughly for a particular person. The sun, after all, is the core identity, the very center of the consciousness, the way we assimilate much of our experience, whereas the ascendant, although it varies in importance from person to person, is not as central to the person's nature. It shows, among other things, the approach to life, but the sun shows life itself. The ascendant must serve the purposes, values, and creative goals of the sun for the individual to function happily and fully. A useful tool for understanding how a person's ascendant and sun sign interact is to compare the elements of the two factors. For example, a Cancer sun sign person with a fire sign rising is usually far more extroverted, forcefully expressive, and confident than a Cancer sun individual with, say, a more conservative, self-protective earth sign rising. For another example, an air sign sun person with a water sign rising may appear much more emotional than he or she really is, whereas a water sign sun person with an air sign rising may appear far more detached and less emotional than he or she really is. It should be pointed out that people are often relatively unaware of their ascendant nature as compared to their sun sign. In that sense, the ascendant is a factor that can be consciously developed further over time and consciously utilized to aid one's self-expression. I've known people who are relieved to find what their rising signs were, since it finally gave them a way of identifying a very deep but only semi-conscious tendency in themselves. In some cases, the qualities and abilities symbolized by the ascendant were just beginning to emerge, and learning the astrological keys to this factor helped personal development greatly. I should emphasize here that perhaps more than with most other factors in the chart, the early environment can encourage or suppress the expression of the ascendant's energies, since it is a primary channel with which one interacts with the outer world. The reader should view the following comparative evaluations as guidelines and as questions to explore, rather than as rigid statements of absolute truth. Taurus Modality or Quadruplicity. The Taurus Modality is fixed, the determined energy mode. There are exactly 4 of these willful, determined signs in the zodiac belonging to the fixed modality. These include Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, and they all share similar characteristics. These 4 signs are better able to focus and concentrate than the other 8 signs. They share a deliberateness and a powerful ability to focus and endure, but they also share the challenge of avoiding stubbornness and close-minded rigidity. The element of the ascendant. The element of the ascendant reveals the quality of energy flow directly vitalizing the physical body and the overall approach to life. Fire or air signs rising tend to conduct energy, encouraging active self-expression and dynamic expenditure of energy. Earth or water rising signs tend to conserve and resist the flow of vital energies, and hence indicate self-containment, sometimes self-repression, and the tendency of living within oneself. Earth signs rising: Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. A matter-of-fact outlook. Focus on the material world and conservative attitudes can inhibit imagination, which is then allowed to limit the person's options and/or restrain spontaneous self-expression. Steadiness and reliability are often well developed and highly valued by self and others. Practicality and inborn patience give more tolerance for routine than other ascendants show. A systematic approach, usually along established channels, is the most common method of expressing oneself. Taurus Ascendant or Taurus Rising. Methodical, controlled, measured movements that often seem like holding a pose. deep dislike of being rushed, strong aesthetic and pleasure-motivated streak in the nature. Can be lazy or steadily productive, but still insists on doing everything in one's own way and at one's own pace. Venus's sign position strongly affects how ambitious or dynamic the person is. Taurus Sun more often seems lazy than Taurus Ascendant, probably because the Sun is the essential vital energy, and Taurus Sun also seems to be more predictably possessive. Both want to enjoy everything they do, and therefore they refuse to rush anything lest they interfere with the pleasure they are deriving from the here and now. An extremely physical and sensual approach to life, and a strong need for closeness, affection, and security. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's classic text, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Taurus on the Ascendant. Strong, stable, and stubborn. Slow in reflexes. Quiet until pushed too far, then there is trouble. Passive personality, quiet and unassuming as a rule. Very possessive and fixed in convictions. Resources and possessions, whether people or finances, are very important. Cannot be pushed, but can be coaxed. Cannot be driven, but can be led. Practical. Good financial sense, and they're affectionate. Taurus Ascendant people are good workers, but cannot be hurried. Difficulty with studies due to a slow pace of mind. Inclined to put on weight, for there is a love of good food. Short, thick neck with square type of body. Non-aggressive, patient, and long-suffering. Can be unreasonable and prejudiced when pushed too far. Jealousy must be conquered if Venus or Mars is afflicted. The following information comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Taurus, the banker, the beast of burden, is steady as she goes. People with Taurus rising are deliberate, focused, and don't like to be rushed. As children, they're generally slower about things, absolutely stubborn, grouchy when hungry, and not easily roused from sleep. Into maturity, these characteristics remain. These people are bothered by impracticality and are sometimes vain and a little grumpy. They need their animal comforts. They're keep it simple stupid types, potential pouty faces, and sticks in the mud. They're usually generous though, and always steady with their efforts. They often say, "Don't crowd me, get out of my way, I know what I'm doing." Physical type. Broad shoulders, low voice, a broad smile with lots of teeth, possibly a plodding gait, with a bit of clumsiness in the feet. Favorite colors? Pastels. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. The significance of the Sun and the Sun sign in astrology. The symbol of the Sun in astrology is a circle with a dot in the middle. This is a very deep occult spiritual symbolism. The circle represents the eternal self that did not start here and does not finish here on earth. The dot in the middle represents the divine spark at the center of every living cell, the light which lighteth every man which cometh into the world. It is the point of light at the center of every living cell. In the blueprint, the sun represents the main expression of the individual, the heart and core of beingness. The sun has a different effect on individuals born at different times of the year. According to the sign and house in which the sun is placed, we are able to judge the general vitality and physique, the qualities of leadership, and the individual's ability to succeed in life. In a personal chart, the sun represents the basic drive for significance, the will, male relationships and female charts, especially with the father, vital energy coming from the etheric levels and prana, fuel on which the total personality operates, urge for power, constitutional strength, and finally, a powerful sun means very great power to do and to be. Keywords of the sun: will, individuality, spirit. The sun is the significator of the spirit in man, the beingness or isness of life. It rules the basic drive for significance, the will to be. Physically, the sun is the sustainer of life, giver of light, heat, and energy. More than anything else in the chart, it shows the will, man's highest expression. Its aspects show deep character traits, the chief ambitions. It needs aspects to the planets for strength of expression in the horoscope. As the sun moves through the signs, its return to the sign of its exaltation, Aries, the eastern horizon, marks the beginning of the astrological year. Springtime brings the release of a new cycle of life. As the sun moves through the houses, its return to the eastern horizon is the beginning of the astrological day, sunrise. The sun sign in its element. The following information comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. The sun sign's element is usually dominant in considering the overall psychology of a person. This is so because the sun sign's element reveals the attunement of one's basic vitality, identity, and power of self-projection, as well as the fundamental quality of his or her consciousness. The element of one's sun sign reveals the basic inner force motivating everything we do. The element of the sun sign also gives insight into how any individual sees life itself and what expectations they have of the life experience. Scorpio Sun. Scorpio is a water sign. These are the common characteristics of people born with the sun and water signs. Basically motivated by deep emotional yearnings and desires. Recharges energy through intense emotional experience and intimate involvement with people. Interpretive guidelines for the sun and Scorpio. Creative energy penetrates surface experience through intense emotional power and intuition. Needs to express one's transformative energy, often reforming the status quo. Craves for intensity, involving the core of human experience, often seeking this in deep, merging, usually highly sexual relationships. Level of vitality is connected to constant inner compulsive desires, sometimes obsessions. Flow of creative expression can be hindered by emotional fixations, reluctance to be open, and fear of losing control. This final article comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Scorpio, born around sundown. Scorpio with Taurus rising. This is an obliging dinnertime birth with focus, determination, and a very definite purpose. Scorpios with Taurus rising know how to stand their ground without budging while considering everyone else's opposition. Now that's a trick. And with undying persistence, they usually get what they want. So they tend to be the kind of people whom everyone wants on their side. But there's likely to be a heavy dose of avarice when Scorpio's materialism meets Taurus's hunger for satiating the senses and accumulating things. These Scorpios appreciate the finer things in life, whether it's the feel of fine leather, or the bouquet of a fine wine, or the delicious taste of a well-prepared meal. They're protective of their personal comforts, and they tend to amass a good deal of personal property. And being deliberate and diligent enough to get what they want, they usually enjoy a comfortable and maybe even affluent lifestyle. But if they aren't careful, they'll fall into a me mindset that isolates them from people who resent what appears to be, and often is, selfishness. Plus, they sometimes accumulate so much that everything they acquire ultimately owns them, leaving them to say in their last breath, "I'd have seen the world, but I had the farm." They need to broaden their scope, however possible. There's also an "I don't want to be alone" yearning for companionship here that can only be fulfilled by true blue friendship. However, that isn't to say that these Scorpios like a multitude of people around them. They often settle instead for a small inner circle, fearing that too wide a circle brings the unknown and might invite problems. The old Scorpio paranoia is alive and well, with a touch of Taurus's closed-mindedness. But all dinner-time births, no matter what the sun sign, are destined to learn how to share and how to be fair with the people they interact with. And for these people, the rewards of learning fairness are stupendous. Taurus, the banker, rising, can lead these Scorpios to success in careers involving financial institutions. They're good at getting a foot in the door and mastering a closing deal. They often do well in real estate. They're a bit narcissistic and usually understand the importance of dress for success. In their professional lives, as well as their personal lives, they smack of tastefulness, and they're loyal to the people closest to them. If they'll exercise their loyalty and be fair enough to spread the wealth, these make things easier, and they'll be much more rewarded for themselves and the people they hold dear.